Dungeons & Dragons Online is a game that I first stumbled into actually late last year. The funny part is I'd actually never played the tabletop version of D&D before. I knew about it, of course, you know, the dice, the role play, the legendary campaigns that people talk about. Of course, I've watched Critical Role multiple times, but I'd never actually sat down at a table and played it myself. So the concept of playing DDO was quite strange for me, and that is also a game that I had heard about but just never really tried. Initially I thought to myself, this probably isn't going to be for me. I'd assumed it would be too confusing, maybe it was just another old school MMO that had just seen better days, and well, that couldn't be any further from the truth. You see, one evening on a whim I downloaded it and hopped in. I thought, well, I've got nothing to lose, it's free to play, let's just give it a go. And honestly, what I found completely surprised me. Instead of the same old tab target, really stale formula of MMOs that we're used to, I was presented with something that I felt was truly unique. Every single dungeon that I seemed to enter, or every single instance, felt like an adventure instead of a chore. The combat really struck me straight away. I loved how dynamic it was and meaningful, the way that you've got to time certain attacks. You can dodge certain ballistics like arrows, you can dodge sword swings by dodging with your character or just simply jumping over them. I love the fact that you could block certain attacks and roll out of the way. It added a real dynamism to the combat, the actual experience itself. Before the combat though, I really came to appreciate the character systems. They are just so in-depth, and I spent honestly more time experimenting with multiple builds and re-rolling every time I got to level 3 because I just wanted to try another class. And I want to put this on record right now and say this, that I don't think in any other MMO you can get this much build diversity and this much build quality, period. The list of builds and different quirks that you can put together within this game is absolutely unholy. You can have endless amounts of fun coming up with your own things or following a dedicated build from the wiki. Needless to say, it didn't take me long to realise that DDO wasn't just another MMO, and I guess it did have a slight leg up for me as I had already played its sister game, which was developed by the same company, SSG, which was Lord of the Rings Online, and of course I thoroughly enjoy that and have covered that on the channel multiple times. So I kind of thought I might enjoy it, but I didn't really realise I would enjoy it as much as I have. What I want to do is go over some reasons in today's video as to why I feel that Dungeons & Dragons Online is a truly unique experience in the market that we're currently in for MMORPGs. If you are someone who is looking for a more grounded, traditional, classic MMO with a twist, this game might be for you. I think first up, it is absolutely key to mention that DDO shares the true DNA of Dungeons & Dragons, a typical tabletop D&D game, but with a twist. It has had to make certain changes for it to fit the MMO format. However, the core features that will of course matter and jump out to D&D vets are here. For example, your 6 ability scores being Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. They are all here, and they all highly and heavily influence your gameplay. Something that I thought was really cool right off the bat is the way that skill checks are implemented into the game, because they're not just invisible, you can see them happening. They happen and show up every time your character or party member detects a trap or a hidden door, or maybe spots a hidden enemy. You really feel like the points that you've invested into those skills haven't gone to waste. Now, while some hidden components like hidden doors can house absolutely nothing, there are some elements where you can get some really cool stuff, or at the very least some really cool lore as to the area around you. The saving throws that we've all come to know and love, especially you guys out there that are D&D vets, are all here as well. And these don't just play into combat, these are in exploration too. For example, if you bypass a trap and you narrowly get away with your life and you roll a decent saving throw, you really feel your own mortality. You really feel like, oh god, that really could have been the end of me there. And if you dodge, for example, or save during a really heavy attack from an enemy, you kind of understand that, all right, well, I'm maybe in a bit of trouble here, but you definitely feel good for getting out of it. To me, at least, it's not a watered down MMO interpretation of D&D. I was really worried that I just wouldn't understand or fit into the kind of atmosphere of the game. I was really worried that trying to fit this game into an MMO would really do it a disservice, but it's not like that. It really is, to me at least, the real deal. The way they have managed to adapt Dungeons & Dragons into an MMO format is really interesting. And one thing that I didn't expect at all was how much interest I would then begin to show in Dungeons and Dragons because of the MMO. Because there are so many intricate abilities, so many key figures, faces, places, lore, it really got my brain working and wanted me to go out and research and really understand the rules and the lore of D&D, and that in itself is really cool. It wouldn't be Dungeons and Dragons without the dungeons, and I must say I'm really, really impressed with the way that pretty much every instance and every dungeon you enter feels handcrafted. It feels individual. It almost feels like every single instance is crafted for you and your party. It's a solo adventure. One of my biggest gripes with MMOs in general is there is so much to and from between the action moments of quest, whereas DDO puts you straight in. It's straight into a story, a really heavily narrative-driven story with great DM narration that really sees you through the ins and outs of what's happening in that particular moment. There are many unique traps, puzzles, secret doors, ambushes from enemies, hidden bosses, and that's just to name a few. I mentioned the narration from the Dungeon Master, and I feel like that is a really nice flavour of life for the game, because instead of treating each instance like a grind or just a rush from A to B, it really gives you some context, a real need and a want to just slow down a little bit. The theme of the narration isn't just story-driven, it can be kind of atmosphere telling as well. It's telling you and describing to you what your character might be smelling, what they might be seeing and feeling in the moment, which adds another layer to your immersion. Now, the depth of DDO goes way further down than I would even be comfortable treading, but I would have to say, from what I now understand of the builds, it has really standardized for me what I would expect out of an MMO game and, you know, of course, overarching a D&D game. One thing that really shocked me is when I first started picking up a class. I mean, I'm playing a couple of different classes right now, a paladin, a druid. I've also got a tiefling that I was on last year when I first started the game. It really surprised me that I'm not just stuck taking class and level up points from just my class. I can actually take certain points. For example, if I'm a druid, I can take a warlock point, or I can take a rogue point to gain certain abilities from those classes that I wouldn't be able to access otherwise. The base version of your class alone offers you a whole host of opportunity when it comes to builds, but when you mix in other classes as well, it really just blows your mind as to what the opportunities are. One of my favorite things about leveling up, of course, apart from the dopamine, is being able to select certain class-defining feats. These feats are real impact moments for the way that your class handles. For example, these can be slightly more passive, like the ability to fight with two-handed weapons and being able to strike through to multiple enemies and attack multiple enemies at once, whereas some can be more moment by moment, like some of the meta magic abilities that allow you to empower or maximize your spells if you're a caster. Some of these feats have a real impact on your character, like my paladin, for example, can pledge a faith to a certain deity, which then gives them access to favored weapons, which massively buff the damage that they can do with those select weapons. Not only that, but it gave my paladin the access to some really strong spells, like being able to clear diseases, healing fully over time, clearing CCs, so on and so forth. All of this is before we've even remotely touched on the enhancement trees, spending your epic points or even your reaper points when you're much, much further into the game. The ability to create a unique character is unlike anything else. You will not find anything quite like this in any other game. Now, as much as DDO is a quieter MMO these days in comparison to like Final Fantasy XIV or of course World of Warcraft, what I do love is that when you can get the community together, which I must say I'm very surprised at how many people still play this game, but when you do get these moments of teamwork, whether you're in a guild or you've got buddies that are playing with you, the class synergy and teamwork, to me, is what really makes DDO feel alive. Having someone play a rogue, for example, that can disarm traps or unlock chests. You have wizards that can crowd control, clerics and bards to buff and CC and heal, paladins and barbarians to charge in and tank, and when you've got this synergy working, it's like a truly, truly beautiful, well-executed dance. Every single class in this game, to me, has a meaningful role. Now, while some definitely solo better than others, what I really like is that each one of them has got their own flair to them. They each bring something new and different to the table. For players like me that love class fantasy, this is everything. The community of the game, while smaller, is incredibly loyal and helpful and cooperative. There are so many messages that I've sent people over my time playing, from tells to guild invites, and they've always been responded to really, really positively. People in this game are happy to run older content with you if you're in a guild because maybe they're on a second life character or on an alt that they want to level up. Now, of course, a lot of the grouping content happens at end game because that's where most people are. But my point is the ability to group and do some of the group-based and group-focused content in this game is still here. And when it happens, it is amazing. The game, despite its age, is still growing. It's still expanding. The developers are adding constantly new classes, new races, new expansions, like we've just had the Chill of Ravenloft, which dropped today as of the recording of this video. There is more epic level content, more legendary raids, more expansions in iconic D&D settings. More importantly though, I love the ability to be able to run the same instances over and over again if you're free to play to unlock higher difficulties, to increase the challenge, increase the reward, not just in gear, but in XP, in favor as well. And favor leads me into my next topic because favor is the game's renown system with each faction. Not only does this favor reward you with in-game items, it also credits you with DDO points that you can spend on the game's cash shop, the DDO store, and buy many of the game's content packs that you would normally have to pay for by buying DDO points with your own money, which means that if you're willing to put the grind in, you can unlock a lot of content here. I guess to lean into that, let's talk about the free-to-play content, because honestly, I was quite surprised with how much free content there is in the game. On the basis that DDO is a free-to-play game, you have to understand that there has to be some monetary gain for the developers somewhere, but for them to implement in as many free quests as they have is really, really generous. Each area that I went to, from the harbour, marketplace, House Denith, and onwards, there was always stuff to do, quests to take, people to see in taverns. I never really felt at a loose end. Sure, sometimes I had to repeat the same quest a couple of times at different difficulties if I'm at a certain level range, but really, it's no hardship. Many of the dungeons, if you're actually taking your time, can take you from 20 to 40 minutes, even up to an hour if you're really soaking in the lore, searching for hidden rooms, disarming traps, that sort of thing. The best bit is if you do decide to grind some of these quests out and earn more favor to earn more DDO points, the adventure packs that you can then spend the money on if you choose to will open up more ways that you can earn more favor and thus earn more DDO points to buy more stuff. There are plenty of people that play this game that really have either spent a minimal amount or none at all. Sure, it would take you a little bit of a time to do it, but it's still an option. Now, of course, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that DDO is a perfect game. There are many negative quirks to the game, like the lag, the old graphics, but to me, the game really has a charm to it. The game does naturally suffer with dated graphics, that we know. Some of the models and animations are a little bit stiff, some of the textures do of course need an overhaul, and the biggest kicker is the occasional lag, which I must admit has been heavily reduced since I last played due to the new 64-bit servers that have been placed in the game. SSG have done their absolute best to do away with the 32-bit older servers and implement new 64-bit servers with the hopes that they will run a lot better given the engine and the coding the game is currently running on. Now, whilst this has cleared up a lot of the lag, there are of course still going to be elements of it. You'll see a lot of this when you get into the raids or the crowded areas, but really it's never bothered me all that much. I've never personally found it game breaking for where I am. What I really love aesthetically outside of all of this though is the fact that it feels like a true 2000s MMO, and whilst that sounds really silly to say, it's got that aesthetic. It reminds me of a more 3D Dungeon Siege. For any of you guys that have played that absolute legendary game, it really gives me that kind of gritty, unapologetic vibe. This game realistically is not afraid to do what it wants to do, and it does it so well. Even though I never played DDO from when it first launched, it somehow to me lands in a nostalgic sense, which sounds crazy, but this game, every time I load it up, go into the tavern, speak to the NPCs, enjoy the music, it has a way of feeling nostalgic and warm to me, and you know, who doesn't want that? I guess to summarize, DDO is not a perfect MMO, but there are no perfect MMORPGs truly out there. But what this game does deliver is a true tried and tested Dungeons and Dragons experience in an MMO format done really well. And to highlight some of the things I really love the most have to be the deep character building, the cooperative dungeon crawling experiences that this game offers, which are top notch, and something that I never really thought I would appreciate going into the game as a D&D virgin. I've really began to appreciate the immersive D&D lore, the stories, the NPCs, the many locations in the D&D universe. Dungeons & Dragons Online might not have millions of players, but what it does have at its very core is passion and spirit, and to me, you just can't buy that or manufacture it. So I guess there you have it. There's a few reasons as to why I personally feel Dungeons & Dragons Online is a truly special MMO. I mean, take me for example, as a newcomer to D&D who's never played the tabletop version, I was drawn in. I was sold this game purely on the passion that I feel for it, the nostalgia that I weirdly feel for it, and the deep character customization. This game is best suited if you've got a few friends that are looking for a bit of a refuge, a bit of a home to go to. You want to explore some dungeons, dodge some traps, build unique characters together, and just have a blast, live out a fantasy. Then DDO might be your next perfect adventure. With that said, thanks so much for checking out the video. Like and subscribe if you enjoy, and I'll see you in the next one.